The House of Kuru, Part 1, Chapter 25, The Great Curse. Preparations were made for Pandu's self-imposed retreat of 18 months, for the life of a king in a forest. Hundreds of servants were called to pack the necessities for the royals. Madri and Kunti were also excited. Living in the forest, away from the hustle and bustle of mundane palace life, was something they too were looking forward to experiencing. Dhritarashtra, on the other hand, was over the moon with joy. He made grand plans for his 18-month tenure, which included erecting temples with fire altars, performing great sacrifices, and renovating certain areas of the palace. For once in his life, he felt important and useful. No decision was to be confirmed without Dhritarashtra's explicit permission. It was not that Dhritarashtra actually cared about the impact of the decision, but he just wanted the pleasure of ruling. Pandu understood this and ensured that all laws had to be approved by Dhritarashtra. He even organized a regent coronation. Dhritarashtra was full of teeth, grinning ear to ear. He couldn't even dream this day, let alone experience it. Bhishma, Satyavati, and Vidura all blessed both Dhritarashtra and Pandu for the welfare in their ventures. Pandu left for the forest of Chitrakoota, and Dhritarashtra ascended the mighty lion throne of Hastinapura. Such was the curiosity of fate and the house of Kuru. Life in the forest was blissful for Pandu. He spent his time sporting in the woods, hunting deer, tigers, and lions. This was a great blessing for the villagers near the forest of Chitrakoota. The population of wild lions, tigers, and leopards had risen considerably, and the lack of a good hunter left the population in turmoil. On a good day, the cattle would be mauled by a nearby tiger, or sheep would be flayed by the claws of a Barbary lion. On a bad day, an infant or a child would be dragged into the woods by a tiger or some wild beast. The villages in the vicinity of Chitrakoota welcomed King Pandu and told them the atrocities committed by the wild animals. King Pandu allayed their fears. "Fear not, my brethren. I will ensure that not a single wild animal troubles you from here on," said the king. True to his word, he began hunting tigers first, as they were known for their ferocity. Along with his entourage, he found every den, nest, and cave where the lions, tigers, leopards, and any other panther decided to threaten the village. A year passed, and Pandu's fondness for hunting only increased. He had managed to subdue every wild animal in the vicinity, yet Pandu's love and thirst for hunting was not quenched. He settled on hunting deer. He would spend hours, days, and even sometimes 2 or 3 days patiently waiting for a good game to hunt. One day, while hunting, Pandu spotted a curious-looking deer. Rather large, with big antlers. He could not see it very clearly from his vantage point, but he was certain it was a large game. He took aim and peered through the thick forest of bushes. He pulled his bowstring as far back as he could and let go. To his horror, the deer let out a shriek like a human being. He ran to the deer, but to his terror, it was no longer a deer. It was a human sage and his wife engaged in embrace. Pandu's arrow had shot through the wife, killing her instantly, and had pierced the sage's right abdomen. The sage was hollering in pain. Pandu lifted his head and placed it on his lap, applying pressure to his wound. "You! Who are you? What happened to me? Why is there an arrow?" asked the sage, despite his tremendous pain. "I am King Pandu, king of Hastinapura." "You are?" asked Pandu meekly. "I am the sage Kindama," said the sage, and suddenly it occurred to him that Pandu was responsible for this. "You shot the arrow that killed my wife," accused Kindama. "No, No, I aimed it at a deer. It had large antlers. It couldn't have been my arrow, protested Pandu. My wife and I are part animals. We belong to a group of sages who can transform to animals at will. We were making love in the form of deer. You monster! Do you not know it is against the laws of hunting to kill two animals in embrace? Not even lions and tigers kill prey engaged in coitus, reprimanded the sage. Pandu could not do nothing but hang his head in shame. This caused further agony to the sage, who bellowed, "Just as you murdered my wife and I during our period of intimacy, you too shall lose your life the moment you embrace with passion," roared the sage, as life slipped from his lips. Pandu was thunderstruck. This curse could not have come at a worse time. He was rearing himself for procreating the house of Kuru. "No, no, no, no!" yelled Pandu as he held the sage's head, but it was too late. The sage had pronounced the curse. The might of a sage's curse was well known, and this particular curse ensured his death. Pandu sat down in desolation, his body numb and fingers were trembling as the head of the sage, Kindama, rolled off his right lap. After what felt like an eternity, Pandu's retinue found him seated next to the murdered couple. Kunti had led the charge in finding Pandu, and to her horror, she saw him sitting next to two dead people, with a pool of blood discharged from their respective wounds. Kunti gasped and placed her palm on her mouth. She was desperately hoping against what she was thinking. Hunting accidents were a common occurrence, and she desperately hoped that this was not what it looked like. But alas, fate has been only too cruel to the house of Kuru. Pandu was sitting in stunned silence. "My lord," said Kunti, as she placed her palm on his shoulders. Pandu continued to look aghast, as though he had seen the Lord of Death himself. Kunti then caressed his cheek softly when Pandu snapped out of his trance. "I've committed a grave sin," said Pandu. He then told everyone, including the entourage, about the proceedings. Kunti winced at the sight of the slaughtered couple. She hung her head low. News reached Madri too, and she sank in woe. Pandu commanded a great funeral to take place for the sage Kindama and his wife. Their bodies were decked with jewels stacked on wax, wood, and cotton, and were placed on wooden boats along the Ganges. As the boats floated, arrows tipped with fire were shot to both the boats, and the boats caught aflame as they were killed by an arrow. The funeral was completed with a flaming arrow. Pandu was devastated with the current events and couldn't bring himself to hunt anymore. The lineage of the Kuru house would no longer continue. Both his wives were lamenting their unholy fate. Pandu cursed himself over and over. How could he have been so stupid? He kept wishing time could be turned and he could have pulled away the arrow before he shot it. If only he approached a little nearer. If only the deer got up. If only he chose not to hunt that day. Thousands of scenarios kept running in his head. Kunti could see that Pandu was depressed. "Madri, let's see if we can lift his spirits," said Kunti. "I agree," said Madri, as they both picked the best fruits they could find and approached Pandu. Pandu took the fruits without saying a word. Kunti and Madri looked at each other. This was very unlike Pandu. "My lord," Kunti interjected, but Pandu ignored her. "I understand you do not wish to see me in order to protect me," said Kunti. "This is correct, Kunti. I am sorry, my queens. I will abstain from all sensual enjoyments and commit to a life of asceticism and don the lifestyle of celibacy. Send an envoy to Hastinapura. Tell them I will not return. I will be on self-imposed exile for the rest of my life, said Pandu. Kunti nodded meekly, just as she had suspected. Shakuni had somehow derailed their lives.
I hope you liked today's episode of The House of Kuru. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel and like this video so that you will be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thank you.